It's the money and the car that you want.
That is it.
It's a personal decision. Sure.
You judge a lot of shows.
Well,
A ton of shows. You was actually certified.
yeah, I do. Mostly, I don't judge a lot of shows. I try and stay with the Concourse shows.
Well, you used to,
the AACA.
and then you move more into the Concourse events.
Yeah, and because the local car clubs, they really, everybody has their own idea on how to do it,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's fine.
It becomes political to a degree too.
Well, they call me up to help them set it up. I'll show them how to do it, but I'd rather be out playing with the cars than walking around judging. I do judge
over time. You do.
I do
right.
judge the AACA, which is that's the Antique Automobile Club of America, and then there's the Classic Car Club of America, CCCA.
Okay.
And I don't judge with them because I'm in training with them.
I see.
But I'm a certified AACA judge and a Concourse judge. I just got back from Keeneland Concourse, where they do the Kentucky Derby. And the car that won was a Peugeot. It looked like it was going here's a 1936 Peugeot that looks like it was going 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
Beautiful car.
Yeah.
Sleek. It was so low that I couldn't judge underneath it without lying on the ground.
I tell you, back then, designs put a lot of soul into those designs. I mean, they shaped them like the wind. If you look at the fenders and just the way the body lines flow. I mean, you get a little bit of that now because everything's computers and wind tunnels.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly computers. But back then, it was like, okay, we're going to shape a little bit more off this corner. We're going to trim a little bit off this top.
They were very influenced by the aeronautic industry. So
That's right. I mean, you could kind of tell, like, even during the 50s, when the jet age and all that came about, and then the tail fins
and the big pipes. And,
the pipes was shaped like thrusters. It was the front end was like intakes of jets, and it was a beautiful.
Chrysler even had a turbine car.
They had the turbine car. It was just the ultimate. I tried to throw a picture up here of the turbine car, but it was definitely
You're right.
Yeah, it was definitely something that turned a lot of heads back then. It actually was on the road, so it was fantastic vehicles. Now cars, like I say, the styling is starting to come back more now. I know cars, like even in the 80s, everything had its own like character. Aside from some that was like, okay, this car looked like that car, except for badge engineering. But then you had the 90s come along, and then everything started getting like jelly beans, with the headlights a little different, and everything started looking alike. But I think things are starting to branch off now.
We'll do a little plug on my Corvette. The 97 Corvette, the C5s, with the slipperiest, all of them, including the C8s. Well, I don't know about the C8, but the C7.
Yeah.
I don't know about the new one, but the and some of the new Mustangs, the wind coefficient is extremely low as well.
Absolutely. I mean, in shape, people like they got dinged a lot when they came out for Europeans, to European, but in the times.
But to go back, you're talking about the trying to get the best out of the cars in the 90s.
That's right.
They really paid a lot of attention to wind speed.
They didn't, and I would like harken it back to like when the original Mustang came out and it was cutting edge.
Oh, that was a great car.
And then you had the 2015, the S550s, and it was cutting edge because it was different. But to the young generation who didn't experience the Fox bodies and the SM95s and whatnot, it was like, wow. They seen the S5 with one of these, the 197s, and then the S550s came out, and it was like, oh, it's not a box anymore. It's slick, And I think when the 60s, the 1964, 65, when it hit the market, it had that same appeal for those that were used to seeing the boxes or the boats on the road, and it was a nice little box. It was a Conno box, but it had proportions and it had sleek lines at the time, and everybody was like, "Oh wow!" They had scoops and the ribs on the side.
Well, Mustang. The fun thing about being an appraiser is that when I get into the research, and that's where the big work. You get the pictures and you set the condition. That's important. But then when you get into the real research, you find out so much. The thing about Mustangs is that you'll have a car that looks like each other, but one has a different code in the VIN, and it'll tell a whole different story about what that car is.
That's right.
In some cases, it can make tens of thousands of dollars in value. Like the K code they had in the early Mark Mustangs. It was a combination of a certain motor, a certain transmission, certain suspension, and that combination was so rare, that it made the car much more valuable. So in researching that, I had to be really careful, and I pay attention to that kind of thing. So particularly with Mustangs, that VIN number in their codes. It's true also with Mopar. So you'll find one combination, paint codes, all of that. Because this combination is one of 15 made that combination in the country, and how many are left 30 years later?
Yeah.
So that becomes a rare item. Now, rarity doesn't always translate to value.
That's a big mistake that a lot of people make.
Yeah.
They think that they only made something of this or this is that, but it doesn't equate to value. Now, what drives that?
Sometimes.
Well, what is that caveat that?
Appeal, collectability. I mean, why is trying to pick something, why is it say a Shelby GT500? It's rare. That's extremely valuable, but it's valuable because people want it. So you could have a rare, Thief.
Yeah,
I got one that's still running. It's
right.
rare.
I understand your point.
But how many people are going to want it?
Yeah.
So it's a desirability of it. Maybe that's the term.
Right.
Collectability is the word that we use in appraisal.
Is it that those vehicles maybe take a little bit longer to gain value? Or is it one of those one-off things that check that out?
Yeah. Things change. I mean, for example, Porsches, I spent a lot of time with Porsches. For years, a 914, we're thinking, well, those are cheap throwaway Volkswagens. Now, George Hussey just sold one for over 100,000.
Okay. So, if you got a Pinto with plaid seats, there's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance. I know you got one of 10 in your town.
Actually, right now, a Pinto with plaid seats would probably be a very interesting car to see.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, what was what some of those American Motors?
That's right. It was a ton of those. It was a ton of American Motors special Levi editions and things.
Very collectible now.
Very collectible now. AOC always had that niche market. The Ramblers.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, they always had a niche. The Javelins, the AMXs was always there.
Yeah.
But then nowadays, people are starting to, especially now, people see them as true muscle cars. Back then, it was that's just Javelins.
Actually,
I couldn't get the Mustang. I got the Javelin.
Actually, arguably, I think there's a lot of challenge to this, but at the same time, arguably, the first real muscle car was a 1957 Rambler Rebel, and it came out with all of that, the longer hood, the big V8, the standard transmission on the floor, 4-speed. It didn't have disc brakes or anything, but it was this was a very fast car, probably one of the fastest cars they sold.
Wow.
And very small numbers. My guess right now, if someone had a real pristine Rambler Rebel, that would come out fascinating.
Huh.
I haven't seen one in years.
Wow.
And of course, the 64 GTO, that rocked the world first. That would be the first commonly known muscle car.
Right. Huh.
But I think
that's true. The GTO was one of those.
Yeah, that really set the stage.
It set the stage. Well, a lot of people forget that. They think muscle cars, they think Mustangs. Or they think Chevelles, and, things of that nature.
Camaros.
And Camaros, that's right. That's right, Camaros. Which are going out now. They're going away.
And certainly the Roadrunner. Don't forget that.
Yeah, the Roadrunner.
All the Dodges.
The Dodges, the Dusters. And, that's right.
Matter of fact, I just did an appraisal the other day on a Demon. A Dodge Demon.
The new ones.
No.
The older ones.
This was 1980 1972? Yeah, 72.
So all the Mopar guys, get up on your trivia.
That's
The new age Mopar guys.
Sweet car.
There was an older demon.
And they recently came across a Chevelle Yanko. And that was astounding. I've never seen one before.
Wow.
I actually got a chance to drive a 65 Corvair Yanko when I was a kid.
That's right. They did make Yanko.
Yeah, and that's where he started, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he did the Camaros.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
he did some others too. But the Chevelle, to have one done by the Chevelle, was a very valuable car.
Wow. Wow. Where do you see the trend of collectibles going now?
Boy, that's the future. I wish I had a crystal ball.
I know. But I'm quite sure, like, nowadays you see people are like, okay, I'm trying to get this. Because I remember, like, especially when Barrett Jackson first came mainstream, and everybody started look at the Mopars shot up in value. If you had any Mopar from the 60s, I mean,
well, it's
you hear people, I know what I got.
I mean, I remember going to Steve White's auctions locally around here. And then the Red Top, and then Vicari when he was here. And they were nice. And Vicari, he does a real professional job. Matter of fact, he's going to have one in October at Cruising the Coast. And Pizza, he does a real nice job. But I never really had the money or the time or even the inclination to go to the big ones that you see on TV.
Right.
And I did go, I was judging at Amelia Island, Concourse. And they had, what was the name of that? One of the big R&M Sotheby's. And I went in there. And with all due respect to them, and they do a wonderful job, I had to leave. Because they were selling cars for far more than they were worth.
Wow.
And I'm not sure exactly what the dynamic was. I mean, you got 2 or 3 millionaires in a room with a hefty amount of alcohol. Is that the secret? I don't know. And I know what what the car's worth.
Yeah.
And this is going to be an outlier, because I have to go do an appraisal. I measure, and I got something that sold for 40%, 50% more than it's really worth. I just said, this doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know much about the auctions or why they go the way they are. But I think it does skew people's perceptions.
It does.
Because they think, wow, I have a 57 Chevy. It must be worth $150,000.
We saw that happen with Mustangs a few years ago when this guy was clearing out his inventory, and he had like all these Fox bodies go across the stage. And it was pulling big money, $30,000, $40,000. I mean, it wasn't even the next week. You're saying you go online Marketplace or Craigslist, and you start seeing beat up Fox bodies, $10,000. I know what I got. I know what I got. Come bring a trailer. I got. Yeah. Just put it out this field. Give me $5,000. It's a shell, but I know what I got. And that's true. It skews people's perceptions of value.
The reality is, it's only worth what somebody with money in hand is willing to pay that day.
That is true. That is true.
And Wheeler Dealers is a good example of that. Shows up all the time.
Yeah.
This is the money I got. We're willing to go.
That's true.
And I can't tell you how many times I regretted saying no.
Well, maybe sometimes
you want to come back now? I'll take it now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because you never know. I mean, I remember growing up in the 80s and whatnot and seeing car values of certain things, and you're like, yeah. And like the old Celicas, the Supras, who ever thought that those Celica Supras from the 80s would be fetching like $30,000, $25,000? I mean, those cars are like $2,000, $3,000. I mean, Fieros, like we were talking about earlier. I remember not too long ago, you go 15 years ago.
I remember Rich had like 6 of them. Rich.
Exactly.
Rich Rossi.
Yeah.
Cars and coffee.
Exactly.
Yes.
Those cars, somebody backyard, get out my yard, $800. $900.
Come and get it.
Now, if you have a decent condition 88 Fiero, you got people out there asking 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for them.
Yeah.
88 Fiero GT. Just gotta make sure all the panels are still. But
I mean, that's it.
it's
Going back
amazing.
to your question about the trends. If I had a crystal ball, the cars that I would have bought, I would have bought a 914 Porsche.
The little,
Yeah, for $3,000 8 years ago that I could sell for 40 now.
exactly. I remember seeing an 82 Porsche 911 for 14 grand
Yeah, I mean-
when I was younger. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
now some of that, yes, is inflation, but a lot of that is just perception and desirability. And going back to the word we use it's collectibility. This collectible is somebody really wants.
is it collectible?
And so rarity doesn't always go to collectible, but it does have a major factor in it. Like, for example, I did one just Monday. It's a Porsche 930 Turbo, 77. And there are a number of them around, and there was a lot of them selling in the 80s to 110, 120 range. But they were in 97s. And I'm looking into why, what's going on. They only brought 700 of them in the country. And how many are left? And with Porsche, you put the word turbo in there, the price goes way up. Take the top off, the price goes up. So it was an interesting study trying to find out what that one was really worth.
Wow.
But, yeah, it's a very nice car. What was really interesting about this that threw it off is that he had 20 years ago, the guy was really a driver. And that's the thing about a lot of our cars, is they really should be driven. And that's the thing that gets me is that a lot of times the value will go up because of low mileage. But if you have a 30-year-old car that's only been driven 500 miles a year, I'm going, okay, what's going on with the seals? What's the gas tank look like?
That's true, because those sales drop.
Yeah, I mean, if this has not been maintained, I would rather have 100,000 mile Porsche that's been properly maintained, that's 40 years old. I mean, how old is a 77 Porsche? It's like 33, and that's 50 years old.
50 years old.
55
exactly.
years old.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, if it's not been properly maintained and properly driven, they need to be driven. And with Porsche particularly, or particularly with well-built Mustangs, if they're not driven sturdily, I won't say beat up,
Right.
but they're made to be.
They're made to be driven.
They're made to be
This is
driven,
like- yeah.
and not just puttering around for groceries. Any really performance car.
Right.
So in this case, 20 years ago, they took the engine out and they put on bigger jugs. And they made it a 3.3 turbo, and they probably put in some, high quality piston rods and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's hard to know because of the research, but he has all the paperwork. So that's the other thing, is keep your records. And keep them nice. I mean, if you come on, you're selling a book a car, and you have a good record book, and you have a good story behind it, that makes it much more appealing to buy. The thing I would say, though, in all of this, particularly for people who are inclined to flip to build up to a better car all the time, it's a whole lot easier to buy than to sell.
A lot easier to buy.
Many times easier to buy.
Wow.
And the regret is in the buying.
Not in selling.
Well,
It's a little great in selling.
well, I mean, the regret in selling is you miss it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really wish that car went back.
Exactly.
But the regretting the buying is that when you can pay for it and you find out that you're in more than it's really worth because you bought on impulse,
Bought on impulse.
emotionally,
Yeah.
and we've all been there.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
it's a lot easier. I mean, it just to take the money out of your pocket and then
That's true.
dig into it. I mean, the Packard, I got a good buy on it, but by the time I got home, I realized I had to rebuild the whole suspension, front suspension.
Yeah. It's come with the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now it's got value because we put all new suspension in it.
That's true.
So
That's
whoever
true.
does, I don't see me selling that, but whoever gets it next is going to have a good car.
That's right. Let's talk about this one.
Sure.
This is the 356.
356.
What year? Tell me about that.
It's a 62. The first cars that Porsche came out with was the 356. And they came out right after the war, 47, 48, 49.
Right.
I'm supposed to be a Porsche historian, but I'm not very good at it. So the 356, again, how much of this is myth or how much comes out of the reality of the history, you can find in different books. But 356 is referencing the 356 design.
That's right. That's correct.
And so that's what Ferry Porsche had done with his father's help. But it was really Ferry Porsche, not Ferdinand Porsche, that built that car.
Huh.
And they had a handful of them, and they just started racing them. And they, the concept was great. Rear engine, air cooled, lightweight, fast, nimble.
Yeah.
And they started winning races, and at that point, that made their race heritage. And that's really what the car's built on.
Yeah.
This one is a 62, which is later in the heritage. But that's one of the reasons why I could afford it. I never thought I'd have an open top because they're very pricey. But I was able to, I'd sold a 64 C Coupe. Kind of a rust bucket, a lot of Bondo with that car. But the engine ran beautifully. Wow. And we sold it, and I got much more money than I thought it was worth. So I put that in the bank, and then I sold it. I had a Triumph, and that one got sold and went to France. I put that one in the bank. And then I sold the white Cabriolet, and I put that money in the bank. So I started looking because I wanted to get myself a 356. And there's a company in Marietta that's one of my advisors, and George Hussey has Automobile Nation or something like that, Auto Nation or something, right near Cobb Parkway in Marietta. Guy's a genius. They call him Dr. 914. And he's got a parts store there, and he's so he was helping me look. So I was looking online, and I came across a site, and don't sue me if I put a bad word out here on the site because I don't mean it negative. I'm just confused by him. It's called Trovit.com. And they had a lot of cars on there with good prices. So, and the way they control it is interesting. Or at least, I don't know if they've changed it, but this is 5 years ago now. This is COVID era. And you had to put a note in there with your email. And the seller at that point was supposed to contact you.
Really?
Yeah. Privacy controls or whatever, or maybe it's scam controls. I don't know what the story is with that. And I work okay with email, but if you really want to know that I know what you're talking about, just call me. I'm kind of used to that voice connection. I may miss an email. I don't look at all the texts. So I try, but it's a bit of a hose, drink from a fire hose. But so anyway, I put it out there. There were several cars I liked, including this one. And I put in there, I said, I'm not a tire kicker. I have money in the bank. If the car is what you say it is, which is always a big question, I'm interested. Please call me. I put my number in there. Not one call.
Wow.
5 different cars, not one call.
Not one call.
So then I'm looking in Hemmings. And there's the same picture. Different telephone number. No, not put it this way. It had a telephone number. It wasn't a different one, it had one. So I thought, okay, I'm calling it up.
Right.
It turns out that it was a company that I had done parts with before in other cars called CarQuip in Boulder. Real old school Porsche guy with a big parts company. And it turns out that it was one of his clients. He had actually worked on the car, did the tune-ups on it to sell it. And the son inherited it from his father, who had the car rebuilt in the 80s, I think, and used it with his wife to tour from the West Coast up and down from Canada to Mexico. So here's a car with heritage and different car shows from Pebble Beach all the way up to Canada, down to Mexico, I mean, all over the place. And it was, a stretch, but here's this open top car that I probably bought the cheapest open top 356 you could find. The guy had died, left it with his son who was ill. The car had sat in this private airport hangar in the high desert in Boulder for a while, and he put it out there. And so I said, well, I'm going to be out there. I bought a ticket the next day, flew out on a Sunday with Delta. A two-way ticket on one day, $100 to Boulder and back that day, and drove the car. It needed a little bit, not a lot. The work on the bumper chrome was pitted, so I had to replace some of the verticals on that. The top was a vinyl. Why I put vinyl on a Porsche, I have no idea, so I had to change that, and it really looked awful. Like I used condom. And so so a little bit of stuff, and I don't know much about the motor or how many miles are on it. The speedometer is broken, and even the vendor with 5 digits, I could have gone around how many times. But it runs so well. I took it up to Blue Ridge with a Porsche tour a week ago Saturday. And it was the only 356, one of 2 air-cooled. And it kept up with all these powerful supercars that the Porsches are putting out now.
Wow.
Well, largely because they couldn't go that fast. On a straightaway, I was lost.
Wow.
From the corners, they held it on.
Wow.
And we had lunch together. It was a fun time.
Huh.
So that's one of the things that the Porsche Club has, that we do a lot of tours. We do a lot of fundraising for Emory Hospital with these tours. So but that's a little bit about that car. Her name is Sylvie.
Yeah.
And
beautiful car.
I never.
You'll see a bunch of pictures coming up.
When I was a kid, I never heard of Porsche. I graduated in '65. They were around, but I never heard of them. I was a farm country, small town kid. We were dirt track.
Right.
Ford, Chevy, Dodge, that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I was going to college, and one passed us. And I fell in love. Just the shape. The exotic aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so it took a while, but I finally got one, and I had a lot of other air-cooled before I got a 356. But the race car was designed by around it, as you remember. Wow. That I started 30 years ago.
That's amazing.
So that was my dream car. So
that's a great story.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
That's a great. Now, usually I have the car in the background here, but it's about 100 degrees today.
I probably should.
It's an air-cooled Porsche, so we didn't want to risk it, which is great. I mean, I wouldn't want him to do that anyway because of this heat, and it also is a school day, traffic day. So, but I put pictures up. Hopefully, when it cools off, he can bring it by and we can take some photos. The Mustang is always a good feeling.
I'll get in that car and take it across the country. And you're right, it's not fair to the car. When it gets too hot for an air cool, it's not fair to the car.
Absolutely.
Today wouldn't be as bad as some.
Well, you're sitting still.
Yeah. The bump, stop and go would be hard on that.
Absolutely. So he's forgiven this time. But great, man, great. But anything you're chasing at the moment, or?
Not for me. The appraisals are really keeping me busy. One of the things were an area that I hadn't expected when I got into it. I got into it because of the ACA needed appraisers. So I ran into a network. So they gave me Georgia and Alabama. I do a lot of work in there. I don't get to the South Georgia too much, but I did one appraisal that was interesting. A gentleman had a Studebaker collection. And I had took my driver's test as a Studebaker, and on the farm I had driven a Studebaker truck. Now, if you don't know what a Studebaker is, do the research. It was a remarkable car. Studebaker started out before the Civil War making Conestoga wagons.
Really?
Yeah. and they had, I think their first car was an electric car. And this was, that would have been probably in the 1890 or 95 or 1900, something like that. But they stayed true to their wagons. And so anyway, I collected 28 Studebakers, everything from a 29 Dictator what about the name for a car?
Exactly.
It was before World War One.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
So anyway, the Dictator, and then up to an Avanti 2, and all the stuff in between, including a Golden Hawk, and a Silver Hawk, and a few others. And he was putting it together to raise money for an endowment that he's putting with Southern Georgia College, University of Southern Georgia.
Right.
And he wanted to sell them through Haggerty's auction company.
Okay.
If you have a car that's not running, I can't really give it a high value, because who's going to buy a car that's not running?
That's true.
And they're not certainly going to go anywhere near retail,
That's right.
because they don't know what they're getting. How much work are they going to have to do? So he asked me if I could find somebody that would come start it. And I called around in Southern Georgia. There wasn't anybody. They were going to leave their shop to come over there and try and start 28 cars. You can't think about pulling them out of this collection and driving them, towing them to them.
Right.
And then in most shops, if you bring one car in there that's not running, it's going to sit in the corner till they get to it anyway.
Right.
So what happened is that I found a guy. He's a Georgia Tech graduate, retired, had a big shop in Dunwoody, and he sold that. And he was just looking to keep busy. So what he does, this guy's certified in Porsches, Volvos, Mercedes, Ferraris, Dodges. He does anything. What he does is he goes to people's houses whose cars are dead, gets them started, so that they can either have him fix it or take it to a shop.
Right.
Very inexpensively. So he went down there and got all those cars started, all but one, in 3 days. And when you put this up, put my number, because anybody wants this guy, have him call me, I'll hook him up. The guy's a genius. And the only reason why I couldn't start it was a lark, is that the hood was so screwed up that nobody could get it open. He just left it.
Wow.
And I don't know if they've been up for sale yet or not. What's the name of it? Black Diamond or something? Haggerty has a real legitimate auction company that they do.
Yeah.
And that was a fun project.
I bet.
So anyway, that's how I got into all this appraisal stuff. It's a great way of being, helping people.
Yeah.
But let me add one thing about helping people before we break. What I didn't expect when I started it was working with diminished value. Georgia is what they call a diminished value state. And what that means is that if you have an accident and the car is repaired, even to your satisfaction, one of two things: it's either on Carfax or whatever research on the VIN number on the internet is going to show it's an accident.
Right.
Or you have some honor-bound, reliability to tell people about it. You don't want to sell something and not be honest about what it is, which means that you're going to end up selling it for less.
Right.
Because it's got an accident. And who wants to buy a car at full retail that's got one accident? Because it's going to come back and haunt you.
That's true.
So you sell it for less, and everybody's happy. It's called diminished value.
That's right.
In Georgia, the insurance company is supposed to pay you what that is.
That's right. That's crazy.
And they'll come back to you and they'll send you a check for $100. And if you say, no, it's worth more than that, in some cases it could be $1,000, $2,000. I've seen 3 or 4. You say, no, I want more. They say, well, get an appraiser. So they call me up, and I'll tell you, almost to a case, I feel like it's fun helping people that otherwise are in conflict with an insurance company.
Huh. There you go. In a nutshell.
So I'm thinking about, I'll come over to the club one night and we can talk about how people do that.
Yeah. That'd be great, man. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, that was a very good point and good conversation, man. So yeah, we gotta have you back one day, man.
I'll bring the car. I'll bring the Packard.
Hey, bring the Packard. That'd be fantastic. Hopefully it's cooler, and the temperature is a little lower, and the traffic's a little bit better.
I love the Georgia heat.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's here. It's here for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for coming by the garage.
Well, I really enjoyed it. Hope I didn't talk your ear off.
Hey, no, that's what I'm here for. I got an ear for everybody,
But
man. So it's good.
grab some copies of the local car magazine. You'll find them all over the place up here.
Absolutely. Local car magazine. I guess you can get it online too. So
I don't know that he's online.
Sure.
The guy that owns it is Larry
but I
Gardner.
got a Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook, of course, online.
Yeah.
I think your website. Okay.
So that's fine.
Sure,
It's fine
online.
online. So I'll put a link in the description along with the Southeast Wheels events and the UK Wheels events.
Yes.
So there you go. Mike Thies, y'all. So
Enjoyed it, guys.
absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers
And
to you.
this wraps up another episode of Gears and Beers or Water with Barry.